Welcome to Stay Home, Stay Focused. I'm Jack Moline. I'm the president of Interfaith Alliance. And my very special guest today may very well be my oldest living friend from my youth, author, artist, and all-around good guy, Paul O. Zelinsky. Hi, Paul.
Hello, Jack. This is really amazing to see you here.
It really is. What you been up to since 1970?
Just not much, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought,
Life, career, kids, grandchild.
yeah. Well, I was a kid in class who doodled constantly, and
Yep.
I still do, and I am. So I turned that into a career, and I thought I might be a fine artist, but I ended up being a children's book illustrator, which I like better. And I started after college and made my way in New York, and now have a whole bunch of children's books to my name.
No kidding. I want to get into that in a minute, but I want to ask you first what I ask each of my guests, which is, how are you doing in this whole mess?
Oh, I feel very lucky. I am doing, unreasonably well. I have much to be grateful for, and I've heard from experts like you that gratitude is the way to get around all sorts of problems in this day and age. And I'm very lucky. We're in a beautiful part of New York City, and I am able to walk to and from my studio every day. So I'm not personally hemmed in, and it's really not that different. What I do and what people with my occupation do is not that different now than it was before. It's been a very solitary occupation, and
Hmm.
continues to be.
And so you don't have to maintain a focus that tries to push away this pandemic on a minute by minute basis.
It's not enough. I mean, I've always been very good at sort of denial and compartmentalizing things. And on a day-to-day basis, when I sit here in my studio and I look out the window, it's exactly the same as before. I'm not really running up on a regular basis against the things that are making life terrible for so many people. So yeah, and my
Well,
wife is
you're
the
very fortunate. You're very fortunate. Um, I know you want to talk about how we met. How did we meet?
oh wow. I'm just wondering if you remember all the things I remember, if they come out the same way.
We're going to find out in a minute.
You were one of the nice people who befriended me as a new kid in class in third grade, Miss Volker.
Right?
Right? And she was Miss Volker for a while, for like a month, and then she disappeared. And we had some awful substitute for a couple of weeks, it seems to me, or maybe
Right?
months, years, it seemed. And then she came back, but she was Mrs. Overturf.
Right?
Remember? Okay. So anyway, there were some people who just, I wasn't exactly new to the school. I actually had been there from the start, but we went to
But I
California.
was new in third grade.
Were you new? I didn't even
Yeah.
know that. I
Yeah.
had no idea. I skipped a grade. We went to California, I came back, and apparently the curriculum there was like a year ahead, and my parents, unbeknownst to me, um, didn't, thought this wasn't appropriate. And one day I was pulled out of my second grade class and brought into Miss Volker's third grade class. So that was where we met, and we became friends that year.
And that explains why your picture is not in our class picture from that year.
Oh,
Because I wanted to put it up so that people would be able to see what we looked at. Instead, you have to deal with this, which is our high school graduation pictures.
yeah. Well, it
Could have been worse.
could have been worse. hmm I could use the hair.
Uh, I have too much of it right now. I really, really need a haircut.
Oh,
So, as you mentioned, Miss Volker, Mrs. Overturf, who is now Mrs. Cohen, and we want to give her a shout out because she
yeah.
is watching this. If not right now, she'll see it afterwards.
Oh, I'm,
60
yeah.
years after we were in her class, so that's
Wow.
something.
I hand it to you for staying in touch. That's really something.
I didn't stay in touch, Paul. Yesterday, when I was looking for the picture, I
Mhm.
found our class picture in my stuff and said, I really ought to give her a call. So I talked to her this morning for the first time in 60 years. So
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
This is almost like, after death, you know what I mean?
Right. Right. Resurrection.
Right.
So, what I remember about you, actually, all the way through high school, is that you were good at everything, except maybe football.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
How did you find your way into children's literature?
Uh, well, thank you for saying that. I sort of was had a not a hard driving father, but a sort of very high achieving one, and a feeling of not measuring up unless, So um, I had to choose a major in college, and art was going to be a big, you know, possibility, because that was really, maybe it was good in a lot of things, but that was where my drive was, and I said that my hand there's a compulsion. It's just, if I'm not holding a pen, I want to be holding a pen. If I'm holding a pen, I need paper, and something's going to come out. So I doodle um, uh, a lot. I've been putting random sort of doodles on Instagram. By the way, if anybody here wants to see my Instagram doodles, they're all Zelinsky. But that was going to be something I would do probably anyway. And I decided finally that I was better at that than any of the other things that I was interested in college. Majored in art, but that was not illustration, that was fine art, because I happily got into Yale because Mr. Keenan, the art teacher, if you know him, he told me that they had a good art department there, and I applied. But illustration was a totally dirty word there, and I didn't take a course in it, and I didn't. I studied fine art, but it turns out that one year there, a student created a course that was an option that they could allow. Created a course because she thought it'd be cool to have something about children's books. She was writing poetry, and her advisor was Bart Giamatti.
Wow. Later, the commissioner of baseball.
Right. Mm-hmm. And he convinced her that it'd be okay to start up this course. And so she looked up the phone book in New York and phoned Maurice Sendak. And he answered, and she convinced him to teach this course. And it appeared there in the course catalog. I saw this and thought, that's a cool looking thing. And I took it. So that kind of set me on that path.
And he really was the modern master of children's literature in general, both in terms of his writing and his illustrating. And wrote, among other things, the classic Where the Wild Things Are, right, which is a scary book.
It's got, well, he is very well known for various things, including not believing that children should be treated with kid gloves or given sugar-coated false versions of the world. But every kid takes that differently, how scary that book is. I mean, we were a little old for that, so we didn't have it as little kids. But I've seen it's a lot of kids just love it and don't feel any fear.
My kids all loved it. They also love, by the way, The Wheels on the Bus, your edition, because parts move, and that is the most miraculous thing for a kid who can't read yet. So that's wonderful. But Sendak, as you said, was willing to tackle these things that are scary. Now, at Interfaith Alliance, among the things that we stand for is the healing power of religion. Your work is not religious, but it is like Sendak's in a way healing. You've done Rapunzel and Rumpelstiltskin, both of which are frightening stories. You illustrated Hansel and Gretel, which is probably every child's nightmare, being left in the forest with a wicked witch who's going to eat them. If it wasn't, it is now that I've said it. How do you approach this material that you're going to present to what you know are young and impressionable children?
I do it to I start with a feeling, with an emotion, a feeling, and say with Hansel and Gretel, it was this awe, a feeling of awe, really, of being alone and in a big woods, and it's getting dark and you don't know where you are. And And I think that's really very meaningful to me. And I just thought if I can capture that and put it on the page and let the story take its course, um, there's something there. I mean, that's really what I love about illustrated books, and it's what stories do. They take you somewhere, and then there's an ending. It's not just here, be
Right.
scared. So so I don't, and also I don't really think of an audience. I'm not thinking, oh, here are children, I'm going to scare them now, they'll make them feel better. I'm not making anybody feel anything. I'm taking this thing and making it as beautiful as I can and as rich as I can, and making the story take me somewhere. And I feel if it takes me somewhere, it's going to take other people there too. And that's my faith.
I spent a lot of years as a rabbi in a synagogue, and it was always my practice to ask the question that you practice, which is, if you're looking to talk to your children about something difficult, ask yourself where you are before you begin talking to them. Because unless you know what you think, you're going to have no tools to respond to whatever they present to you.
Well,
And
it's my theory that children are people.
really,
Yeah, I don't know. I think, and I'm not so sure that I'm one myself, but children definitely. And and if and I love going to schools and things and talking to kids, because I don't feel like it's talking to kids. That there are ways that you don't talk to kids. You have to understand that there are levels that you get added on as you get older,
right.
rusty levels that kids don't have yet. But the basic things, I think, are all there.
You mentioned going to your studio every day. Do you treat your art like most of us treat work? You go into the office, you do your job, and then you close up at the end of the day and come home, or does it stay with you in different ways?
Oh, yes and no. I don't really know. Um, I, uh, your themes, stay focused, stay home. And I was thinking of how that relates to what I do. And, now that there's this pandemic and all these things, am I able to stay, focused? And I kind of think, well, why should I expect to start now? You know, um, I try to focus. I always have tried to. I come in, and by the time I get myself to be doing something productive, it's time to go home. So and then it stays with me, and I think about things. And when things are rolling, I can't wait to get here.
And when you come up with an idea, is the idea something you then try to bring to fruition in the public market, or are you just as happy or happier to receive an assignment from somewhere to interpret something for the public?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I've been most times, most of what I do is an assignment. It comes from a publisher, because I don't have that many ideas, and I wish that I were a prolific writer of excellent things. But I've been really lucky that publishers have sent me wonderful manuscripts. I've been given incredible writers to illustrate for. I've illustrated for Beverly Cleary, for instance, several books, and can't get better than that. And some dead people, Carl Sandburg, I loved it. So they write better than what I've been doing. So anyway, but then if I find something and it's marvelous, then when I'm trying to turn it into pictures, I don't really remember who made it. It becomes the thing that I belong to it as much as anything else.
So if I were a publisher and I called you up and I said, Paul, we're looking for a way to talk about this coronavirus and pandemic to children, is that an assignment you would take on? And if so, you want to give us a preview?
Oh, I wouldn't. Well, I don't feel very qualified to do that. I would say, why are you asking me? My I was thinking, what do I have? I don't really think of myself as someone who is a model for anybody to run their life based on me. But and I thought I was writing, I think on Twitter to let people know that I'd be here with you. That maybe I'd be asked for advice, and like, what kind of advice could I give? And it occurred to me the only advice that I really feel like from the heart that I want people to follow would be doodle. Just doodle, which you could make it mean something. Play and sort of disengage and engage in something that's just not worried about anything. So doodle. So that's my advice, and then figure out
Great.
what.
And not just for the kids, but for everybody, right?
Like I said, kids, aren't a separate category. I don't think so. Yeah, if it works for them, it should work for anybody.
If you can allow your ideas to flow through your fingers and onto a piece of paper, you've got something to have a dialogue with yourself, which is just wonderful. And if you have a friend who does it very well, then you can bring somebody else into the conversation also. Mm. All right, so now we have a few minutes left. I get to do a little time travel with you. When we were seniors at New Trier High School East in Winnetka, Illinois, we had the same English teacher, but we were in different classes, Robert Boyle. And the last assignment he gave us was 1,000 words. That's what we had to do, was 1,000 words. Do you remember what you presented to him? Because he showed it to everybody.
Okay, I was going to get, you're asking this because you do remember.
I do remember.
Yes. Yes, I decided to write an epic poem. It was about a woodsman it was sort of like the Jungle Boy, who thought he was a boy brought up, but thinking he was a wolf, was it? Mm-hmm. He was a tree. He thought he was a tree. He was left in the forest as a baby and never moved an inch. As he grew up, he was brought up by the other trees. So I don't know. I don't remember where this came from, but it was more doggerel than epic poetry. What did I know? I mean, but it was called the Plataniad because that was the genus of the tree that he was with.
And there was an illustration that went with it that didn't necessarily have to do with the poem.
You know what? I don't remember that. Could you tell
me? A picture of Mr. Boyle, who was, I won't say pretentious, but he was florid in the way he often presented things to us. As an Elizabethan poet,
he had such an aquiline
outfit. Yep. And flicking a flea that he had crushed from his finger, because that was one of the
talking about John Donne's flea.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's wow. Yeah. Thank you. Wow. I don't know. That's that drawing. Unless I gave it to him or something, it's gone. But,
you gave it to him. You gave it to him.
Oh, good. And he got a doctorate shortly after that. I know somebody who was in touch with him. Have you been?
He did. I was not in touch with him, but as it happens, another faculty member, and now I can't pull up her name to save my life, wound up being the assistant city manager of Alexandria, Virginia, where I live. And when I met her for the first time, she said that she remembered that I had gone to New Trier for whatever reason and started telling me about all these people that she was still in touch with. And he unfortunately died quite a few years ago, but she was in touch with him through his career and then through his eventual illness and death. So
wow.
Quite a guy. A lot of memorable people at New Trier, both on the faculty and the student body.
That's true.
So, Paul, the last thing I want to say before we wrap this up is that I had a lot of reasons for wanting to do this conversation. First of all, was to talk to you again, and it's on me that it's been so long that we haven't had face-to-face conversation.
Me too.
But
we should do it again, maybe not publicly even.
Right, absolutely. But this is something that has been wonderful to draw on from years ago, and to use this opportunity of being sort of sequestered to think about the people that we should reconnect with and remember the things that made us who we are, that brought us where we are today. You and I and another friend of ours used to do these projects together for no reason at all other than to examine minerals or bugs or something like that. And they were formative. And here we are again, having lived our lives, having had our careers, having built our families, and sitting at home now. And this is a tonic to my soul, and I hope it's been a good experience for you too.
It's been amazing. Thank you so much, Jack.
It's my pleasure, and I know you were nervous, and I hope when you look at this recording, you're going to find out you were just wonderful. So thanks for being with us. Take care of yourself and your family, and for those of you who are watching and listening at home, stay focused.
Bye.